Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and if you want a provocative political candidate, Joshua Smith joins us, Republican to primary candidate Joni Ernst from Indianola, father of seven, Navy vet. Thanks for coming on the Iowa Podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's provocative because, you know, here we have, and we're in an era of political division. Americans, a lot of them don't like it. They want people to kind of see eye to eye, but there's nothing more provocative than you running that digital ad with "You suck, Joni." You know, you're not pulling any punches at all. So, I mean, I want to get into all that because it's very aggressive language. It's "You suck, Joni. Get your bleep together, Joni." A lot of stuff on there. So we're going to get into all that. But first, you're kind of a relatively unknown public face. You've worked on campaigns before, and so right off the bat, it's you know, going to be a couple of years until you're formally running against Joni Ernst. But right off the bat, who are you? I generally don't do this. Sure. I don't give these open-ended things. But, you know, that's what Iowans want to know is who are you? And so outside of Navy vet, father of seven, you mentioned before we started, you've worked on campaigns since 2016. Who are you? Sure.
Well, I'm, you know, like I say in the ad, I'm just a normal blue-collar working class guy. And that's the truth. You know, I've been doing blue-collar work since I'm 15 years old. You know, started digging trenches for a company that my mom was a bookkeeper for on custom home builders, joined the Navy right after 9/11, you know. Go protect my countrymen from the evil terrorists that I thought were, you know, going to continue to hurt us. And so that's who I've been my whole life. I got involved in politics when I got out of the military. I saw the wasteful spending and the loss of human lives from our warfare state that is, you know, kind of imported or exported around the world by the United States empire, right? And so when I got out of the military, I wanted to be a part of that anti-war cause. I was still Republican. I didn't see eye to eye with the party of Bush and John McCain. Sure, yeah. You know, but I found Ron Paul in 2006, and then 2007. I was like, I'm going to work for this guy's campaign. Now, if for some people may not know this, and I may get called a carpetbagger or whatever you want to call me. I'm from California originally, from Oakland, California, born and raised in the East Bay area.
That place is a disaster.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
Yeah,
California is rough. You can't afford to live there. If I wanted to live there and raise 7 kids, I'd have to be a big time millionaire. It'd be impossible. Can't buy land. And I've watched what those policies have done to good people. Yeah, you know. Yeah. And I've had the fortunate experience of having a wife that is from Mason City, Iowa, getting to move here early 2020, right as they started locking things down in California. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Oh, this is when you moved to Iowa.
I moved here in the beginning of 2020. And we've had 3 kids since I moved here. Our family's blended. It's a mixed family. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. It's actually a really cool story too. But anyway, so I started working on Ron Paul's campaign in 2008. I was like, this is the greatest man that I've ever heard of. There's no way the American people could turn this guy away as president. He wants to end the warfare state. He wants to cut taxes. He wants to make life more prosperous for the American people. There's no way they could turn this guy away. And I watched how not just the media treated him, but his own party, the GOP. I mean, they changed national convention rules to keep him out. They were arresting people at caucuses in places like Louisiana, kicking them out of the building, locking them out of the building. It was really ugly. So I worked for his campaign in 2008, not happy with the GOP. And then again in 2012, I was walking around the Occupy Wall Street movement in Oakland, California, in the epicenter, stumping for Ron Paul, saying, look, you guys, you have it right. The economy's terrible. You know, these big corporate interests are destroying everybody, but you guys got to figure out why that's happening. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve. Let's talk about Ron Paul. This is a guy who wants to actually attack the not just the symptoms, but the action that's causing these things. And no one wanted to hear it. And so I was kind of just politically homeless for a while.
Yeah,
you know?
I think a lot of Americans kind of feel that way.
Especially after 2008, the Afghanistan war. I mean, a lot of people were watching this just crazy, out of control spending. You know, we're dealing with the Patriot Act, and we've had to now, get groped when we want to fly, and there's all these different things, right? And so I
don't enjoy that much.
Yeah, nobody
either,
does,
yeah.
But I left, and the TSA has caught exactly 0 terrorists since their inception. I mean, it's not, Anyway, so I left the Republican Party. I joined the Libertarian Party in 2015. I ran for a state party leadership office, and then I ran for national chairman in 2018.
Libertarian, yeah.
For the national chairman, I was watching this national chairman who was kind of left leaning, but also looked like he was trying to tank the party. I was looking for an outlet to make a serious political party in the United States that really wanted to end the warfare state, that really wanted sound economic policies.
I think a lot of people thought the Libertarians were going to be that.
Yeah.
But what happened? Because they turned into, back in the Gary Johnson era, right? It looked like they were going to hit major party status. I mean, technically they've hit major party status in some areas.
In Iowa.
Yeah, in Iowa. But they looked like they were going to have a national major party. Like this was going to be the third party. But then after Gary Johnson, Joe Jorgensen and I can't remember
Chase Oliver.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it just plummeted. The accusation these days is the Libertarian Party almost looks like a frat house. And they're doing shots and complaining, but not getting anything done. So
it's worse than that.
It's really hard because you were Republican, saw the problems, you went to Libertarian, you're back to Republican now.
Yeah. Registered back to Republican. So
has the party changed?
So I ran for, Nick Sarwark was the national chair for 3 terms. I couldn't stand the guy. He was very clearly trying to take the party to the left, and he was trying to parlay off the Gary Johnson campaign. Well, now Gary Johnson ran in 2016 basically to pay back a campaign manager that he used in 2012 that helped him start a business. So he ran to raise $1 million. There's a whole report on this. It's called the Weiss Report. It's on the Tom Woods Show. If you ever get a chance, give it a listen. If you really care that much about libertarian politics, you'll understand that Gary Johnson only ran in 2016 to pay $1 million to Ron Nielsen, who was his campaign manager. He phoned the whole thing in and still got over 4 million votes. Could have easily made the party the national beacon that everybody wanted it to be. But he was also not a great candidate. He showed up high all the time. My good friend Larry Sharp, who ran for governor of New York as a libertarian against Cuomo, who everybody hates. I don't even think the Democrats like Cuomo anymore. He showed up to endorse him publicly on the steps of the Capitol in New York, and he looked like Towley from South Park. He's like, "This is my friend Larry Sharp." It's like you're running for president. This is important, and that's just kind of like the crux of the problem with the libertarians.
Yeah, it is.
And I love the ideas of liberty and freedom. I think that's important, and I probably in the Republican Party, I probably lean closer to the RLC, the Republican Liberty Caucus. But MAGA brought me back to the party. But
interesting.
So I was an at-large representative on the national committee. I lost my chair race, became an at-large. I was an at-large for 2 terms, and then I ran for vice chair, and I actually won my vice chair race. So in 2022, I became the vice chair of the national party. It was a whole new leadership group, and it was all these people that I had tried to help get there, and they did the same things. It was backroom deals. It was all fighting over Game of Thrones, for these positions that don't matter in reality. None of these positions really matter. So I stepped down. I stepped down from the party or from the party leadership. And then someone said, "Hey, you should run for president." And I said, "Okay, well, maybe we'll see what happens." So I actually ran for president in the Libertarian Party at the national convention where Chase Oliver got the nomination. I lost the nomination. Came home to Iowa after running. I mean, I've been on a national campaign for 6 years, without stop. I'd been to all 50 states. I've built this great national network. I was like, we really have a chance to do something awesome here. Libertarians didn't want it. Fine, no problem. Come home, the Iowa State Libertarian Party, there's some really good people involved in that party, regardless of how you feel about libertarians.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
Some really good people involved.
We've had Marco in here.
Yeah, Marco's great. Marco's a friend of mine. I like Marco a lot. Jules, the chair of the state party. Obviously, I told you Ryan, my co-host on my show, Break the Cycle. He's the chair of the Polk County Party, Ryan Kurt. These are great people. But they asked me if I'd run for Senate District 16. I ran against Claire Celsi as a libertarian. The Republicans declined to run anybody. I have great friends that are Republicans here as well. Jeff Shipley's a great friend of our family. He comes over and sits down and has dinner with us at the house. I've worked with him. He's a good guy. So I have some Republican Liberty friends in the state too. But they decided not to run anybody. I got 30% of the vote against Claire Celsi in one of the bluest districts in the entire state without running a campaign. I didn't run a campaign. I purposely didn't raise a single dollar. But I was already kind of one foot out. You know, I had been thinking about like, well, maybe I work with the Republicans in state here that are, you know, liberty oriented. We try to find a way to make it more liberty based in the state of Iowa. And
I mean, so this is the core of my question is, did the party change? Because you left it your back, and is MAGA, Make America Great Again, Trump, is he basically the GOP that was 4 years ago or even 8 years ago now? Is that gone? Is it a completely different party now?
It is a completely, I do believe that it's a different GOP, but there's some really good aspects about MAGA. First of all, Trump showed up to our national convention for Libertarian Party here just a couple months ago, right? In Washington, D.C. And he said, we're going to free Ross Ulbricht. He's the only presidential candidate from the two main parties in my lifetime that went and stood on national television and said, we're going to cut the income tax. We're going to stop taxing overtime. He's talking about ending wars. I mean, he's talking about all the things that we want to hear. Now, will he do it? I sure hope so. I sure hope that a lot of these things, he said he's going to free Ross Ulbricht day one. Okay. That's a huge issue to libertarians because this is a man who's sitting in federal prison for 2 life sentences for starting an e-commerce website. Okay. That's a beacon of like, you've just destroyed liberty in America by setting this precedent, you know, this case law federally that you can't start an e-commerce website that doesn't pay its penance to the federal government, right? And so, you know, he was saying all the right things, and it really kind of woke me up. And I was like, look, we can use the GOP as a vessel to get these liberty-based issues passed. Why not try it, you know? And I proudly and publicly endorsed and voted for Trump and Zach Nunn as well. But I kind of just saw the return to some of these more liberty-based like principles.
Yeah.
And that's different for the GOP because when I left the GOP, it was the party of Bush and McCain. It was the national security state. It was the warfare state. They were all the things that I hated about our politicians. The Republicans were doing that. Now we have it seems like a new Republican Party that's willing to, you know, make America first, which is what, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, America first, but that's the truth. If you're going to run to govern a nation, you need to make sure that you put the people of that nation first. That's how that works. We're voting for you and putting our faith into you so that you take care of us, so that our issues come before issues of foreign interests, right? And so I saw a return to that, and that made me, you know, want to be a part of it again. It's something that maybe grows and makes people more prosperous and, you know, starts to roll back the warfare state. And, you know, we can't be a republic at home and an empire abroad, right? Like this just doesn't work that way. It's every nation that's ever tried to do that has failed.
So outside of Trump, is there a grassroots effort then, or a funded effort to kind of flip the party more into, I'm not saying this derogatorily at all. I just don't know what other term to use, truthfully, but is there undercurrent of people trying to flip from GOP to MAGA? Is there someone funding it, or is it pretty much grassroots people like yourself saying, hey, I believe in Trump's vision, and I think I can further that by, you know, unseating people like Joni Ernst?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And, you know, I think that America has had enough. I mean, especially American conservatives have had enough of sending $100 billion overseas of American taxpayer money when a third of the population having a problem putting food on the table. Yeah, right. True. You know, and we're just tired. You know, in my generation, I'm 41 years old, I'll be 42 in March. Okay, we've been at war my entire life. I sat on the couch and watched.
Yeah, it's true.
I watched the Iraq War I under George Bush Sr. from the couch. It was probably the first time any of us had ever watched a live war on news. You know, and it hasn't ended. It's never ended since then. I mean, we've Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Yemen. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Now, the latest victim in American imperialism or empire or whatever you want to call it is Iran, and they've been pushing for war with Iran. I mean, you know, John McCain sang about it. You know, he literally sang "Bomb Iran." I mean, they've wanted this for a long time, and I think we have this generation of people who were kids just, you know, 15 years ago.
And a lot of people, because, you know, you've talked, I think you've talked about the deep state and how they're running things. Yeah. And is this mostly the military industrial complex, military contractors that are the deep state?
If you have an opportunity to look up
I want to be clear, though. Is that an oversimplification? Is there different... Every time people look at, it's the military industrial complex, they just get paid to make warheads. Is it really that simple, or is there something else going on?
Well, I mean, it you know, it's in combination, in tandem with the U.S. federal government. I mean, these people, you know, they tell us everything that we want to hear to get elected. They get into office, and then all they care about is their DC cronies, right? And which it is the military industrial complex. That's huge
industry.
No doubt. Huge. I mean, We're talking Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. I mean, all these companies that are making billions and billions and billions of dollars only make those billions and billions of dollars if we are exporting war around the world. That's the only way they make it. But Ian Carroll, who's he breaks down these conspiracy theories. If you haven't had an opportunity to listen to him, it's a good idea to do that. But they just made this interactive map basically of who owns America, basically. And they start, with these boxes, and it shows, BlackRock and State Street and all these different corporations, right? And then they break that down. You go in there's little tiny white boxes, retail investors. That's us. We're just tiny little retail investors. All the corporations own each other. They all own each other. So we're talking Lockheed and BlackRock and State Street, and they all own each other. And the government, the federal government, these politicians that we've put in there are insider trading. We know that. We know they're doing that. So it's kind of this like huge, and I don't like when, the left uses fascist to explain every single thing they don't like, right? But like fascism is the merger of state and corporate power. That's really what it was. When it was coined, that's what they were talking about. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing corporate and state power combined to continue to extract money from us, the tax cattle, right? I mean, that's what we are. And we're not. We're Americans. We're free people. We're blue collar. The vast majority of the Americans are working class families. And they're extracting our wealth and using it to continue to grow their power. And the way they do that is by exporting war and buying each other and owning each other. And it's just it's this like cabal of corporate interest and federal government power.
A lot of people, I think, don't want to export war. Like a lot of people don't want to constantly be at war. However, the other side of that is people grow naturally concerned when they see in the media and the news that Russia's going after Ukraine. So I do imagine, even for folks like yourself, you're anti-interventionalist,
oh sure,
you're anti-war. I do imagine there is a threshold eventually where anti-war, anti-interventionalists say it's gone too far.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of people, when they're considering primarying Joni and putting you in that position, think, okay, we don't want to be at war all the time, but is there a point where we step in?
I mean, first of all, we need to protect Americans. That's the number one. Look, if we're going to have a strong military, I think we should have a strong military. We should have the strongest military in the world that protects Americans. Okay. Now, look, if there's some country out there that's absolutely demolishing large swaths of the world, there's probably an argument there to that maybe Americans should be involved.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not gonna say that's not possible, but we've got to continue stop getting involved in all of these civil wars in the Middle East. First of all, I mean, it's constantly we're going in, we're taking a regime out of power, we're installing a new regime, going over, taking a regime out of power, installing a new regime. That regime is now turned against us, and they're fighting them, and they're fighting them. And if you look, Dave Smith, who's one of the greatest Americans alive, in my opinion, who runs part of the Problem podcast, stand-up comedian, very, very smart guy. He says, if you want to know who America's next enemy is, look who we're funding now. Because it's the truth. The Taliban, ISIS. I mean, we funded all of these groups, and then
fought them,
and now we're back to funding them, but only if they go against Iran. And it's like, look, we have got to stop doing this. Period. Plain and simple. We need politicians that are going to go in there and say, "Hey, I'm not taking any more money from foreign interests. I'm not taking any more lobby money from Raytheon and Lockheed. We're going to stop the wars around the world, at least the American portion of them." And we're going to start funding our own people, our country. We're going to take care of the people who are having problems putting food on the table. Our veterans who, come home and they live in the streets, after these wars that they shouldn't have even been a part of.
Right.
We need a more aggressive healthcare system, mental health care system to help them reintegrate into society. I mean, there's a lot of steps that we need to take as Americans to take care of Americans. And our politicians, unfortunately, and Massey has talked about this with AIPAC and NORPAC and the such, these Israeli lobbies, right? How every single member of Congress, except for save a few, have a handler basically from these big PACs that are their number one donors, right? Like, at what point do we say that the American people should be the first thought to these politicians and not a foreign country? Now, I understand the argument as a devout Christian myself. I understand the argument about Israel being our greatest ally and we have to protect them at all costs, but we can't have a federal government that's run by a foreign country. protecting Americans. It doesn't work that way because then our interests are not their first interests. And so, I've talked a lot about how I want to figure out if I was to win, first of all, I have the unique opportunity of walking back and forth between the RLC and MAGA. I think that that's a really important thing to have in the Senate or the House in general, because I am an RLC guy. I am a liberty Republican. But I'm also, in tune with MAGA on many, many things, and in fact, that's why I fell out of the Libertarian Party. My stance is on immigration, my stance on abortion, the way that Christians were treated in the Libertarian Party, I thought was pretty disgusting. And that was why I kind of stepped out, because I'm not for unfettered, total, let everybody come into the country that wants to come into the country. I'm not for unfettered, what I call child sacrifice for abortion. I'm
abortion
not,
access,
and I am Christian, and I think Christians should be respected. Over 65% of the United States identifies as a Christian of some sort. It's a pretty big deal to say, oh, well, we're not a Christian nation, and we're pretty Christian. It's a pretty Christian nation. Now, should the country be ran, as Christian? Probably not. But I don't think we should be treating Christians as they're some, outsiders that don't belong in America. And anyway, so, I have that opportunity to walk back and forth between MAGA and RLC and kind of get more things done in the Senate, which I think is important. It's kind of like Rand Paul, right?
Yeah. So I want to go back a little bit because no, you're good. The concern, and I think a lot of listeners will agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, yeah, protect America when it's America concerns and Americans, duh. But then we hear things like, Joni, who you're running against, which is no surprise, mentioning that, Putin won't stop at Ukraine. This is something we hear all the time. He hasn't confirmed this. There's nothing to indicate, and I don't know which side I actually stand on this, to be honest. Sure. But he has, even in his interview with Tucker, hats off to Tucker for doing this, which is crazy. He has said, no, he goes back to these historical roots as he sees them. And for him, and a lot of other people have said, it's just Ukraine because he believes that's part of their territory. But you have people like Joni saying, Senator Ernst saying that, no, he's not going to stop at Ukraine, everybody. That's why we need to send all this funding over there. So when we are limited in that kind of information, how do we know? Maybe this isn't over, maybe it's a stupid question, everybody, but like, how do we know when actual American lives and interests are at stake and now it's time to go to war? Sure.
Well, first of all, my borders and my freedom and security are not at the borders of Ukraine. Let's just be very clear about that. We got Joni Ernst constantly talking about how we have to secure the border while talking out of the other side of her mouth, spending $100 million or $74 million over to Ukraine, right, to protect their borders.
So, like, go ahead. Sorry.
But so first of all, there's no secret intel that says that Putin's going to continue after Ukraine. I mean, this is all stuff that's
there's
been
certainly
made up.
Nothing public saying
right.
that.
Well, and you also have to ask yourself too, like, has NATO been surrounding Russia for 40 years?
And this is some of the Tulsi Gabbard stuff.
Yes, and pushing their fingers in the chest of Putin. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
We've watched it happen. There's this. They say that Gorbachev's. Said they told Gorbachev.
And just
that
real quick side note for those that don't understand the context. Russia has said, please stop moving NATO missile sites and stuff
around
closer to our borders. Yeah. And the U.S., no matter which way you stand on this issue, has just kept encroaching on those borders.
NATO, and we're the biggest funder of NATO,
exactly,
too. I mean, America
is
the biggest funder of NATO. Right. There's no doubt. If we pulled out of NATO, NATO would drop in size by half
Absolutely,
overnight.
Yeah.
But so they've continued to expand after supposedly telling Gorbachev that they wouldn't expand. Now, here's the thing: is there's a lot of people that say that never happened. They never told Gorbachev that they would expand, but they're saying that he said that they'd never said that when he was already senile and on his deathbed. And so he did for years say that they told him they would not expand. And they did. They continued to expand. They continued to push fingers in the chest. And that's when Ukraine was talking about joining up with NATO, it was like a direct act of war to Russia. That's how Russia saw it. Now, how does that threaten Americans? I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's us, again, getting involved in a complete civil war. I mean, Ukraine used to be a part of the USSR, obviously. One side sees that land as theirs. They say there was a vote taken of people who lived in that region. They wanted to, get back with the Russian Federation. I mean, so we're talking about another civil war that doesn't affect Americans at all, that we're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to fund.
Yeah.
And it's got to stop. We again, with a third of the population in the United States having a problem putting food on the table. You know, houses are almost unattainable, even in a place like Iowa that should be, you know, a beacon of the American dream. We still have land it's bountiful. You can still raise families here. It's becoming impossible for a family like mine with 7 kids to actually put food on the table. You know, and I work hard. I'm a blue collar guy. I got a good job. You know, I got a wife. I've been able to give us a life where she can stay home with the children. But it's getting harder every day. And anybody who's saying, oh, that's the best economy we've had, no, that's absolutely not the truth. And the people who are living in this economy will tell you that it's much harder today than it was 4 years ago. And there's, you know, and it's got a lot to do with, we've got to continue to print money to fund the warfare around the country. And that's just another part of it. Ukraine, Taiwan, you know, this stuff with Israel and Hamas, obviously it's very sentimental to a lot of people. But the truth is that the American government was elected to lead the American people.
And that's what I think you're making a delineation here, which is we can look at other countries, we can look at other things and say that's morally wrong. But at the same time, as legislators, that's not our job.
Sure.
You know, so and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're saying there are still things I can view as wrong or immoral that I don't like. But at the same time, if I were a senator, I'm going to default back to, is this the best path
Does
to the
it
American
benefit
people?
the American people?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's the question that every single legislator in the state and the federal government should be asking themselves. Does this benefit the American people? These are the people who elected me to lead the country. Is this a benefit to those people? And if it's not,
don't you think, and maybe not, but don't you think people like Ernst got the job with that intent in mind?
Oh yeah, Ernst said she was going to go to D.C. and make the politicians squeal like a pig. I mean,
right, absolutely. You have that in your ad. So the big question that I think most people would want to know is what happened. Clearly either lobbyist or special interest or some entity got to her, right? In your view,
we know that they did. I mean, her biggest donors are NORPAC and Raytheon. Yeah, those are her 2 biggest donors.
And so why not you? Like, if you get elected into Senate, how do you not get changed?
Well, first of all, I've been very clear that I'm not taking any money from military-industrial complex lobbyists. I'll take it from the veterans all day. Those are the people that I care about. So
it's a matter of principle. It's a matter of you're saying out loud, I'm going to do things differently, and you can hold me accountable.
Well, and you can look at who I am, what I've been saying for years and years and years when I wasn't running for office. I mean, this is, you know, Joni Ernst was obviously a military officer, a very high-ranking military officer in the National Guard here. She has been a supporter of the warfare state for many, 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 many years. So saying that she's going to go into D.C. and change things when you already know that she's a supporter of the warfare state is kind of like saying, well, you know, I don't really like water. I just have to have it to live. You know, I mean, it's like we know that she's going to go in there and she's going to do the things that the military industrial complex and the lobbyists that funded her do. Now, I've been very clear. I'm not taking any foreign PAC money at all. If you're a foreign country PAC, don't come knocking. I don't want your money. I've been very clear that I'm not taking any money from the military-industrial complex. I want the most individual grassroots donors. Now, if it's coming from the veterans, absolutely. I want every veteran to listen to what I'm saying because I know that you agree with me. I know that veterans agree with me. I know that the veterans who have actually seen the horrors of war and what it does to young kids, impressionable kids, they understand that we need to stop being a part of this warfare state. I want those people, you know. But I've been very clear. I'm not taking any dollars from any of those special interest groups at all.
Are there enough dollars then? Because the reason, and you know this, the reason a lot of politicians do listen to special interests and lobbyists is because money runs campaigns. Sure. And the reason people like Justin Amash and Tulsi Gabbard were thrown out of their party, I would imagine, is that they went against the party.
They went against special interests.
They went against the party. They went against the special interests. And with that, you lose your money, and then neither one of them could run for re-election. This is just what I'm guessing from the outside looking in.
Well, first of all...
so how do you get enough? It's noble, I think, to want a bunch of individuals to fund the campaign, but are we in an era where that's possible right now because of the changing political landscape, or do you still face the pressure to get some of those organizations to write the big checks?
First of all, Amash is a special case because he's in Michigan. He's already fighting against the other party in Michigan. Yeah. I mean, it's not a deep red state. Iowa's become pretty deep red over the last decade. Michigan is not. And so he's already fighting. So I want to take more of a Kentucky approach. You know, I think we have great people there like Rand Paul, obviously, who isn't really a special interest guy. And then you have Thomas Massie, who absolutely has been shunned even by members of his own party many times and still continues to win because, first of all, it's a smaller state. we have a lot less population. We're talking under 4 million people in the entire state. But I've built a national network of individuals around the country that are just normal, everyday American people that want to see better people in the Senate, not just Iowans, Americans, because at the end of the day, our senators from every state affect all of us. Okay. And so I think that we have the opportunity to build the biggest grassroots campaign for Senate in history. I really do believe that. Now we haven't started making fundraising calls yet. It's not even on the radar.
And you're not technically, you don't technically have the documents filed for Senate yet either,
I'm
right?
registered. I'm registered.
Did you get the signatures?
No. We won't do that till summer. That's to get on the ballot.
Yeah, exactly.
I am federally registered candidate.
As a candidate, yes.
Yeah. So I am a the last time I checked, I was the only federally registered Republican candidate besides Joni Ernst.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And so I am federally registered to primary Ernst in 2026. We won't do the signatures. I mean, we need 3,500 total signatures. We need at least 100 from 19 counties. It's not. People are like, oh, that's going to be really hard to do. And like,
it doesn't sound that hard, honestly.
No, I worked with the Libertarian Party. Our entire purpose is fighting for ballot access around the country. I mean, literally, that's what the National Party does all the time. I've run so many ballot access petition drives where we need 50,000 signatures. Sure. We need 100,000 signatures.
So 3,500 is just a week. Is that a weekend for you?
It's a drop in the bucket. We'll get our 3,500 at the fair in the summer.
Oh, sure.
But the 19 counties, I have people in every count. I have people in most counties already. There's 99 counties. I've made the goal to commit to visiting all 99 counties. But we have people in certain counties, especially Polk County is going to be a really big one. To start working on getting signatures in the summer. That's when I'm looking. That gives us a year out. The problem is if you start too early on the signatures, people will move, then they'll be invalidated, and you got to start dealing with the legal challenges because of course they're going to, even the Republicans, some Republicans, not all Republicans in the state of Iowa, but some of the Republicans will probably try to challenge me off the ballot. And that's politics. It's unfortunate. It's a dirty game. Some of us hate playing it, but we know that's the only way to change the lives of our family, our children, our grandchildren is to change the politics. So
last question before you go. Obviously, appreciate you being in here. This has made national news here, I think, last week when Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, now Republican, and again, I'm still learning this. So if I make an error here, I apologize. But this came out when Justin Amash was tweeting about her apparently flip-flopping or changing her position on FISA 702. Any reaction to that?
Yeah, I posted on my Twitter that I think FISA 702 should only be used against the people. 702. Yeah, it'll only be used against the people who voted in favor of FISA 702. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of the national security state. I understand that.
Real quick to back up, FISA 702. I thought FISA 702. FISA 702 is essentially a law that allows the government to spy, but it has to be foreign people. But from what Amash has said on Twitter, is essentially what they're doing is really using it to widen collection of information with the intent of drilling down on that information later, which has American citizens in it. So they've found this workaround to spy on Americans. This is essentially the criticism. And she used to be against it, but now is she technically for it, or where does she rest, and how do you align or don't agree with her on that?
It looks to me like she's trying to get confirmed. So
you think she'll go back to her original position later?
I sure hope so. She's been so anti-national security state for so long that it would be really weird to see that kind of flip-flop. Now, if she does, that sucks. I'm just going to be honest, that will suck. I would rally against her if she flip-flops on FISA 702.
So you're obviously against that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, but this is, I think, where everyone gets concerned then is when people are up for confirmation and when the crap gets ready to hit the fan, that's when they get concerned. Right. And so are there any final words from you on why you will be able to resist what some people may call the swamp or the deep state? How do you guarantee that you're not going to be affected by that?
Well, first of all, I want to be very clear about my time in Iowa. I moved to Iowa in 2020 to escape California politics. Okay. Right as the pandemic started, I saw the writing on the wall. They started locking down the local bars. I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. Yeah, I'm not dealing with this.
That was it, everybody.
I was
when
like,
they
not dealing with the bars being closed. No, it was serious. I was watching them close restaurants, and I'm like, I knew what was coming. I didn't know how long it would take, how long it would last, but I knew it was coming. My wife lived here already. I said, look, I'm coming back here 15 days to slow the spread. And, and I stayed here.
I remember that.
And I am in love with Iowa. I absolutely love the state. I can raise my family here. It makes me want to cry. For you guys that don't know, we're a blended family. My wife had 2 kids when we met. I got custody of an older daughter that I had from a previous marriage. I've been fighting for 10 years to get her.
Wow.
She had 2 younger siblings that were going to go to foster care. I was able to adopt them, and we've had 3 since 2020 together. So my oldest daughter's moved out now, but I still have her 2 younger siblings that are now 13 and 10. And we have 3 kids that are 4 and under, and then my wife's 2 daughters. So we're raising a blended family together. I couldn't do that in California because of California policies.
And it's expensive.
And we're not just talking about, just because it's expensive. It's been created expensive on purpose. We're talking 60 to 70% of everything you make somehow is going back to the state in some form of tax. Okay. It's a lot, and it's impossible to have the American dream in California. So when I escaped here and I fell in love with Iowa, I said, you know what? I don't want to change Iowa into California. And one of the great things is the weather that we're having right now keeps Californians out. It's too cold. It took me 5 years to get used to this weather.
Dude, I've lived here most of my life. I'm still not used to it.
It took me a long time to get used to that weather, but I am doing this because I care about the future of my children, my 7 children. I have 2 grandchildren from my oldest daughter. I care about the future of my grandchildren. We're talking about generations of kids that I want to see have a more free and prosperous America and not have to live through the Bush and McCain era and the Obama era like we did. So when you ask me what my principles are, they're making a better America for my children. It's not fattening my pockets so that I can buy the big house and be like Bernie Sanders and have 3 vacation houses. And it's to make a better future for the kids of America. And you can look at my entire record has always been, at least since 2005, I've been saying these same things. I want a more prosperous America. I want a Federal Reserve that doesn't continue to print money out of control and send it overseas. I want the warfare state to end. I haven't changed on these positions once, not one time. And so I have the track record to prove that this is who I am. I've said these things when no one's looking. I talk to my 13-year-old son about this all the time. He came from a rough life. When we adopted these kids, it came from a really, really tough life. And he was doing some really bad stuff his mom had him doing. And I have these talks about integrity with him all the time and how important it is to do the right things when no one's looking. And nobody's, but it means a lot to you as an adult. Your adult self will thank you for having the integrity that you have as a child. And that's who I'm looking at now. I'm at 41 years old, and I'm like, that integrity is so important. This is how I live my life. It's how I structure my home. And it's the same way I want to see the federal government structured. And I have the track record to prove that.
Joshua Smith, Republican primary candidate for Joni Ernst in 2026 from Indianola.
Indianola, Iowa.
What's the website?
You can go to Joshua Smith, the number 4 Senate.com. It is a landing page right now. We just took it back down to work on some things, but it is a landing page. You can donate there if you'd like to. Obviously, money, like I said, we want the individual donors. We're not looking for these special interest donors.
And we'll make sure to get all that on the show notes page for
absolutely.
those that go to the website.
And then you can find me on Twitter at Joshua at large, and that's where I do most of my tweeting.
Yeah, and you have a really awesome engagement right there. You're really engaged with people. You reply quickly to people, which I always appreciate to see. And obviously, Senator Ernst is welcome on this show as well. All voices are welcome here, so we'll make sure that she knows. But really appreciate you coming on the Iowa podcast, Joshua. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa podcast.